Another layer in our defense in depth strategy is Azure Information Protection. The job of AIP is to address a very specific type of problem that is present in today's computing environments. So for an example of this, think of a case where you might email a file, a Word document, that is an RFP, and that's a request for proposal, and you email that to a vendor. Well, you don't want that vendor to be able necessarily to print it out or certainly to forward it on because it might contain sensitive information. It might contain the bottom line price, and so you don't want a competitor to know what price they have to undercut in order to win business. So you have no control over that file from there in a traditional environment. AIP, however, lets you retain control over that document. So the function of AIP is this. It's a cloud-based rights management solution that helps you classify and potentially protect documents both inside and outside your firm by applying labels. Now again, this is something that's associated with just Office 365 documents, so there are some limitations. It's not a panacea. But these labels that you apply to the documents, which you have enabled AIP and started to configure it, they can be applied automatically by administrators who define rules and conditions based on what's in the document, or it can be applied manually to users, or you can use a combination thereof. So in terms of what your users will see when you're using AIP, you'll see a home tab of the ribbon that looks something like this. So here's a couple of screenshots from Word documents here. The one on the left is provided by Microsoft, but you can see this big protect button that's in the middle of the home tab of the ribbon. So you type up the document and then you can protect it. And in this case here, the Microsoft AIP AI, artificial intelligence, is looking at the contents of the document and suggesting that you apply a particular label. The other screenshot on the right-hand side is just a drop-down menu of what is under that protect button. So you can apply these labels of personal, public, and then you can configure your own personal labels, and then you can also set custom permissions over who would be able to open up this document. And you can also use AIP if you want to track and even revoke access to a document. And the way Azure AIP works behind the scenes is that by applying these labels or setting the custom permissions, what's happening is that you're associating a link, and that link is associated with a document. And so when the user who is outside of your network opens up the document, that link checks with the Azure Information Protection validation service, and once that user is validated, then they're able to do whatever you set with the document. So again, it's a cool feature. It doesn't address the situation of if someone opens up the document, they could always take a picture with their phone. But it does address the situation of if the document's on the phone or a personal device. So your computer, your company laptop may be a managed device within Azure, but the phone might not be. And what if the file gets on that phone? How do you control access to that document? So to set it up, you must have one of the following. You must have either an Azure Information Protection plan, which you can enable and purchase through the Microsoft Azure portal, or you can do it from within your Office 365 admin portal, and you have to have a plan that includes rights management. So again, if a firm is wanting to protect Office 365 documents or emails, then AIP is likely a great solution for that firm. It's time now to look at the Azure Security Center, which is a good place to start when you're examining the security of your Azure-based solutions. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a dashboard that, depending on how it's enabled, the Azure Security Center is really just a gathering place and a graphical interface that reports the results of agents that are installed on the resources deployed within your Azure deployment, where you can then act on any recommendations or security policies that are suggested by the Security Center. One of the other important things to know about the Security Center is that it not only can monitor your Azure resources, but it also can monitor what's going on premises as well. So if your Azure infrastructure or if your computing environment includes a hybrid type of deployment, you can also use the Security Center in that instance as well. Here's what it does. The Security Center provides security recommendations based on your configurations, resources, and networks that you have configured. It'll monitor the settings across the on-premises and cloud workloads, and it will automatically apply required security to new services as they come online. It also continuously monitors services and performs automatic security assessments to identify vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. It uses machine learning to detect and block malware from being installed on your virtual machines. And you can define a list of allowed applications to ensure that only the apps that you validate are allowed to execute. It can help investigate threats and analyze any kind of post-breach activity that might have occurred on your Azure resources and your on-premises resources as well. And it provides just-in-time access control for ports, and this reduces your attack surface by ensuring that your network only allows traffic that you require for your deployed services to function the way that they should. So on this slide, we have a peek at the dashboard that you can find in the Azure Security Center. You see on the right-hand side, you see a couple of recommendations, you see threat protection, and then you see a graph tracking security alerts over time. On the upper left-hand side, you see an overall security score. So the net of all of this is that the Security Center analyzes the security state of your resources, it identifies potential security vulnerabilities, and then creates a set of recommendations. The recommendations, if you act on them, it will guide you through the process of configuring the needed security controls. If you do these things, if you identify and then act on the recommendations, what you will see on the upper right-hand side, or up on the upper left-hand side, I guess, of the dashboard, right-hand side of the slide, is that you will see your net security score start to improve. Now, in terms of getting started with the Security Center, all you need to do is pop over to the Azure portal, and then you should see it listed under the list of tools here towards the bottom of the home page, or you can go to the portal menu and then launch the Security Center by clicking on that blade there. So you may be prompted to install agents, and if you install agents on the virtual machine, you may be prompted to upgrade your plan, but depending on what you've clicked on before, you should get to the overview, and again, this is where you get the graphical collection of the policy compliance, review your score. But of course, if you don't have much deployed, you won't have much to secure right now, but you would get started with something like by clicking on one of these links or by going to the recommendations tab over here, and then start to secure your resources simply by following those recommendations. So that's it for now. Know the purpose and use of the Security Center, and you'll be in great shape. In this lesson, we will look at two additional pieces of the Defense in Depth picture, and those are Advanced Threat Protection and Azure KeyVault. Now, it's doubtful that you'll be experiencing each of these as a junior level Azure admin, but it's certainly something we're expected to be able to define, especially in terms of our AZ900 preparation. So we'll start with this one, which is Advanced Threat Protection, and it exists to address this problem: users. Especially in today's computing environment, it's difficult to tell which users are legit users with valid credentials and valid access, and which are attempts to hack your network. So is that login from an iPad with an IP address that is in Dallas, Texas, is that a legit use of your corporate resources, or is it an attempt to hack into your information? Plus, remember that hacking attempts can happen from legit users. They can try to steal information, or they can just otherwise be a happy corporate user one day, and then they are a hacker the next day for whatever reason. So Azure Advanced Threat Protection exists to mitigate some of this behavior. So it leverages on-premises Active Directory signals to identify, detect, investigate advanced threats, compromised identities, and malicious insider actions. And the thing I've underlined here is that Advanced Threat Protection works with on-premises resources, especially those that are Active Directory resources. The way that Azure ATP works is that it analyzes user activity and information across your network, including what permissions and group membership each user has. It then uses this to build a baseline of activity for normal usage, and then it will log any suspicious activity. So going back to that example that I brought up earlier, let's say that your corporate headquarters are in San Francisco, and so the expected baseline behavior of those users is to log in from an IP address that is somewhere in the Bay Area. If those same sets of users or one user starts logging in routinely from Dallas, that activity is going to be logged because that may be an attempt to hack. It may indicate that an account has been compromised. Or if that same user may be part of a marketing group that has a standard set of permissions, all of a sudden they start to use elevated permissions or try to use elevated permissions. Maybe they're trying to administer the SQL database, and that is unusual behavior. Again, Azure Advanced Threat Protection would capture that behavior as well. So again, the big takeaway here is that Azure ATP is a non-intrusive tool that helps monitor your user base and alert you to any change in behavior. Now, as mentioned, this probably isn't something that you're going to have your hands on as a junior level admin. This is a tool mostly for SecOps and security professionals, and they detect advanced attacks. Again, I'm underlining hybrid environment where you have on-premises Active Directory resources. I'll also point out here that you can't take it out for a test drive as part of your trial subscription. It's part of this specific Azure license that's mentioned here in this next bullet point. It's also not available through the Azure portal. It's something that you would start to configure and manage through portal.atp.azure.com. Again, recognizing the role and function of Azure ATP is the job here. Now, the next item we should be able to word associate is Azure KeyVault. And the problem that Azure KeyVault exists to address is this. Attackers know where to find passwords and other secrets that are necessary as users and services access resources in an Azure environment. In addition, passwords just generally suck. They're just not a very secure mechanism for granting access to a resource. Humans aren't very good at making secure passwords. So it just leaves the whole username and password as a relatively insecure or a very easy attack vector for attackers to use. Sometimes you need to give out a username and password, or at least security credentials, so that people can access information or resources that you have within your control. So the solution for that is Azure KeyVault. The Azure KeyVault allows you to place an access credential, otherwise known as a secret, in a vault and then provide access to the resource by sharing out the secret without sharing out the actual password. Using Azure KeyVault, this access can be managed, secured, and revoked very quickly. So here are some of the things that you can store in the Azure KeyVault. You can do secrets management, securely store tokens, passwords, certificates, API key, and other similar type of secrets. You can also perform key management, so you can create and control the encryption keys that are used to encrypt your data. Certificate management in Azure KeyVault allows you to provision, manage, and deploy private TLS and SSL certificates. And then finally, you can store secrets that are backed by HSMs, which stands for Hardware Security Modules. So as you can see, there's quite a wide variety of capabilities that's included with Azure KeyVault, but once again, it's typically something that's going to be managed and architected by either SecOps staff or security professionals. You can find out more about the Azure KeyVault at azure.microsoft.com and then /services/KeyVault. So there we are, Azure Advanced Threat Protection and the KeyVault, 2 additional layers in defense in depth.